It's time for the Voice of Reason podcast. Here are your hosts, Sean Phillips, Andy Van Beber, and Travis Kirkendall.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for joining us. This is the Voice of Reason podcast. I apologize ahead of time if you hear a loud rumbling. It is not my booty cheeks clapping. It is thunder.
I just saw that lightning flash
outside.
Nice.
Yeah, no, we are expected to have a potential tornado warning. It is going to. Twister 2 comes out this summer, and apparently tonight in my backyard. Yeah. So, but no, thank you all for joining us. This is our post State of the Union episode. We did a simulcast. We streamed along.
A lot of good comments on it. Thank you.
We are here to clear the air on a couple of things. I was talking about this with Tony, my better half, earlier today.
Yep.
So one thing that is that I'll be the first to admit, and one thing that we will be getting better about as this show moves forward, is bringing on one of the original things that we had talked about when we started this show is bringing on different guests from different backgrounds, different walks of life to give their side of things. We have gotten away from that, and that is not due to the fact that we didn't want to. It's just things get crazy, life gets crazy. It's hard to organize things each and every week. Some of the times, as I'm sure you as our listeners know, we are very off the cusp at a lot of times that we do these podcasts. So one thing that was made clear, I hope I'm still there, and V, I'm going to pass this off to you in a second. I need to switch chargers. My tablet is dying faster than it is.
No problem.
But before I get there, one of the things that we have discussed is that many folks might think that as of late, we have been more on the right-wing leaning side of things. And here's the thing. I cannot stress it enough. I know V can't stress it enough. I know Travis couldn't stress it enough when he was one of the hosts on our show. We are not right-wing. The one thing I need to say, and then I will let V take over, give his piece, and then I can add to it when I come back after I swap this out, just so I don't lose you guys, is being critical of a president or of a candidate does not necessarily mean, especially in this case, I cannot stress that it does not mean that the opposite side of the coin is the side of the coin we want the head to land on. Okay?
Absolutely.
Just because we are critical of Joe Biden, if you have gone back and if you've listened to anything that we've talked about over the last 3.5 years, we are very critical of President Trump as well. When he was president, now that he is no longer president, we have gone into depth. Yes, we have talked about how there are certain things that we think are a bit exaggerated, when it comes to some of the legal battles that he has seen. But we've also dived deep in and talked about how very guilty he is of other things.
Mm-hmm.
So, and V will touch on this, but one of the big things is we cannot stress enough, being critical of Joe Biden does not mean that you are pro Donald Trump. No. Being critical of Donald Trump does not mean that you are pro Joe Biden. It is okay to say that we as America have a political leader problem on both sides of our parties. Part of the reason why we discuss this, I think that maybe as of late, as we are getting into a certain period of time of the election season, I think that it might seem to some listeners, for some of the clips that we've seen, because we have actively been talking about the president, because the president is the one that has kind of been in the spotlight. It has not been as much Trump in the buildup, because the things about Trump that we've mostly discussed have been his legal issues. The things that we've been discussing about Biden that are pressing are the issues that he is having. Some of them seem to be with his cognitive ability to function as a human. And now getting into some of his takes on things like immigration, on things like the economy, his economic plan, Bidenomics. We have been critical of those things. I cannot stress it enough. Us being critical of those things does not necessarily mean that we line up with the views
right.
of those that would consider themselves on the far right. With that said, V is going to give his piece. I am going to grab a new charger. I will be right back.
So when we part of our new listenership, and we do get a lot of listeners. We like I said, we are slowly working our goal towards 1,000 on TikTok, and basically, it's through my account, but we're still pushing for it. We have 600. I have 644 followers right now. We want to get to 1,000, and we get a ton of views off of our TikToks, and some of the views that we get are the ones that are highly, when we start talking about the president. So last week we were talking when we did the simulcast, which we got, like I said, we got a lot of strong views over that, but some of the comments, and I broke my own cardinal rule. My cardinal rule is never read the comments. Never read the comment section. Never read what somebody has to say. But when we're doing the simulcast, and if you haven't listened to last week's show, please. I mean, it was largely us listening to Joe and kind of busting in on comments, but one thing, and I sent this to Sean earlier in the week. It was somebody said we were talking about it was like the job situation, and this one person says, "I wonder if right-wing cultists even listen to themselves speak." It was the inflation rate. He said that same inflation tracking statistic is the same tracking metric you claim was true under Trump, but now it's a lie under Biden. And first of all, I don't know how to take being called a right. I've been joking with Sean about this. I told my wife, I said, "Hey, guess what? I'm a right-wing cultist," and she kind of looked at me and raised eyebrows, like, "Really? Since when?" I was just like, "I don't know. I'm a right-wing cultist." But I've been called, and we've had other times when I've been called a right-wing apologist. If anything, I'm not, and Travis and Sean kind of track in different. We have different ways we track in some things, but I like to think of myself more as moderate, and people hate that term. Oh, you're wishy-washy. You're a fence rider. I don't know if I want to claim that I'm being wishy-washy or weak or
Here's I this might sound stupid to some, but wouldn't in certain cases, because you said you're a fence rider, when you go to the rodeo, okay, you get bucked off the bull. Where's the first place usually that the cowboys will run to?
Run that fence, baby.
The fence. And why? Because there's a raging bull charging at them on one side of it.
Yep.
Riding the fence is not necessarily a bad thing. And here's the thing. What kills me and we've talked about this, and I have said it before, and again, this is something that we've deferred on, but I believe inherently people are not as different or as intelligent as we like to think we are as we were way back in the day with Romans and the Egyptians and all these other great civilizations that came before us.
We're so dumb.
And the reason why is, for as big of a nation as we are, and there was a European YouTuber, I don't remember his name, but I actually really appreciated because he posted this thing recently, and I promise I'm going to circle back to this.
You're fine.
He posted recently about how he constantly hears how Americans are not well traveled. He's like, in Europe, that's a saying. Americans are not well traveled. They know America. But he was like, people got to realize, like, the state of Texas is as big as Europe. Like, it's massive. And I know that's a gross exaggeration, but he's like, you can drive from one country to another country in 30 minutes, in an hour, 2 hours in some cases.
Right.
And he's like, there are states that are bigger than a cluster of countries. in the United States. He's like, it's not that Americans are not well traveled; they are very well traveled. If you have been, up and down the East Coast, up and down the Midwest, up and down the West Coast, you've covered more mileage than Europe. So, not traveled is not the word. And so, with as large of a country as we are, there's what are we at? 337 million. Okay. Obviously, not everyone is going to get along with one another, but that doesn't mean we just have to have two sides of the coin. It is okay. I am what I would call I am very fiscally conservative. And what I mean by that is I am actually I like the idea, and I'm sure that V can speak to this as well. I don't mind paying taxes as long as I know that what I am paying taxes for is going to something that's important. I can't stress this enough. One thing that I probably would disagree with a lot of some of my friends that might be Republican, or some of my colleagues, anyone that I might know that might be more right leaning, is I love that we have a government support system. I think that it is good. However, I think that it can be easily abused, which I think is an issue. I think that there should be better allocation of those funds for government assistance.
Absolutely.
But here's the thing: like, is it? We are at this weird point where we've gotten in politics where there is such a quote unquote divide that the narrative is you have to lean one way or the other. You have to take the Fast and the Furious fork in the road. Go with.
You can't be a moderate. You can't be moderate.
Yes, no, you can't be moderate, which is unfortunate, because I could be very fiscally conservative but agree with what we would call more democratic social issues. I could say I am against. Some people could argue, I want our economy to get better, and I think that we should pull away from some of the exaggerated spending that we have, but also go, I don't think we should have overturned Roe v. Wade. We've gotten to a point though where it's like, hey, if you feel so strongly about this one topic, you have to take the whole 90 degrees. You have to take the whole angle. And that is really unfortunate, because I think that there's a lot out there. I think there's a lot of different parts of the political spectrum that we don't get to. We are so, shoehorned in on this idea of Republican and Democrat. And the thing is, and I can say, back in the day, post George Washington, was it by John Adams? Did we already have our like the Federalist and the
well, you
like,
had
were we already
right? So your original two parties were the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. The
Correct.
Federalists were for the ratification of the Constitution. The Anti-Federalists were against it because they believed more in state rights than they did, the sovereignty of the states over the sovereignty of the whole.
Now, in your, because there's a lot more reading, as you could tell. Most of these are untouched, but I will show you guys some of my. I found a list, and this is a sidebar. I apologize. There was a really good article that I found by NPR that was books that you would want your president to read, and I actually have quite a few of them, so I will share some of them with you, and then some other historical ones that I'm thinking that maybe, because on Thrift Books I got most of these for like $3, so maybe next month we could do a Voice of Reason book club and do something like that. It'd be great. But when was in your, because you are the buff here, and I probably didn't pay enough attention in government. When did we start to? So we had the Federalists, the Anti-Federalists. Was there ever really? When throughout our young country's history has there been a legitimate third party that has come in and actually made a swooping change, whether it was during election season or because obviously we no longer have Federalist and Anti-Federalist. That narrative has shifted.
So we've been dominated by two parties for most of the time. So
correct.
When the anti-federal
that I've known, I just didn't know if there was ever
no.
like a
right so Thomas Jefferson basically got out of government for a while, and he started working on the Democratic Republicans Party, which is the modern day Democrats. And when he started that, and then Adams was I want to say that Adams was the last Federalist president that we had. Okay, then you had Jefferson, and then you had the appearance of what's called the Whig Party, which was basically leftovers from the Federalists, who were anti-slavery, but they were also pro. They were very very big government in nature. And then by Andrew Jackson, was it? Who was the last? The last Whig was William Henry Harrison, or I think William Henry Harrison, or the guy, I can't think of the guy who took over after him, because he was only in there. But those were your two Whigs. And then Andrew Jackson took over, and we had what was called the Era of Good Feeling, where we had one party, and that was the Democrats. And then 1856 was the first Republican candidate for president. And at the time, the Republicans were considered to be kind of an upstart party that didn't really have a chance. And then you had them with John C. Fremont, 56, 60 was Lincoln, and then you have back and forth between Republican and Democrats, more Republican than it was Democrat throughout the 1860s. Then you enter in third party. So to get to your original question. So then you had William Jennings Bryan, who ran for the Populist Party at a time when farmers were making dirt wages, and we had a gold back dollar that was
crazy?
Yeah, that a gold back dollar that pretty much kept prices in check. And at the time, the populists were wanting a silverback dollar because there was a much more abundant supply of silver to drive up and so populists ran on a platform for 2 election cycles. William Jennings Bryan for both of those. And then after they had found a new gold deposit in the Yukon in 1896, 1897, the gold issue went away. The populists went away, and then 1900, enter in Republicans, McKinley, who had as his vice president Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt served from 1901 to 1904, after McKinley was assassinated, 1904 to 1908, and then after that he goes off on safari and leaves Taft in charge. Comes back, the Republicans don't nominate him. Then Roosevelt starts the Bull Moose Party. Bull Moose Party is a very strong third party, and it actually split the It was so popular that it split the Republican Party. More Republicans voted for Roosevelt in that election than they did Taft, but Wilson still ended up winning the election.
And we talked about that, how there was before he was fully embraced by Republicans, so that history didn't repeat itself for the Republicans. We talked about how there was a chance that this upcoming election season, it would be the Republican, the Democratic, and the MAGA party. That was
a possibility.
Something that we had kind of discussed. Yeah.
Well, and
what I believe is we would have had similar results. It would have been a split of the
right. If we had looked back, I mean, we can look back in some of our episodes and early on in season 3 and late in season 2, I think we were convinced at that point that of, what was it, the 94 indictment charges that Trump had brought against him, we thought there's no way in hell that this guy's going to get a nomination bid. And what was it, Tuesday night, they had another round of the primaries, and Trump pretty much has sewn it up.
I'm pretty sure it's official that both Joe Biden and Donald Trump now have the require delegates to be the official the official representatives of each of their parties, which again, as we've talked about, will be interesting as we creep past summer and get into fall. If any of these charges do come to fruition, and if Trump will see his day in court before elections, because
there's some rumors that I've caught on X, haven't been solidified or anything, that some of the charges in Georgia may be dropped.
Interesting.
So that's not a fact yet, but some people are saying
this is my own.
They've got a 30. They've assigned by the way, they've assigned a 34-year-old judge to the case in Georgia. 34 years old.
Let me ask you this, because this could paint some of my ignorance. So one of the things that has been talked about, especially usually by our folks on the left, or our Democrats, or left wing leaning individuals, is we have talked about how the Supreme Court was a Trump appointed Supreme Court, and where people are not happy are with some of the more, we will call them, right wing decisions that the Supreme Court has made.
Mm-hmm.
Hypothetically, in Trump's predicament, and I'm just not the expert here, and you might not either, so we might have to have our handy dandy lawyer Alex Ellison on here soon. But can Trump's legal team, how often can you push things up before they become like a Supreme Court issue? Because I know that you can like continue to appeal. So, for example, and the only reason why I know this is like all the way in Colorado, we talked about, we kind of briefly discussed this, that turned us, we were also anger, right-wing, fear-mongering monsters because of this. But I had brought up a point about how, to make a very long story short, in Colorado, there was an individual who refused to bake a cake for a same-sex couple, and that made its way up to the Supreme Court based off of all of the verdicts. My question is that, can any case just make its way to the Supreme Court? How does that work?
I mean,
I am not versed in that.
Well, my limited knowledge upon the Supreme Court is limited to what I've taught in government. So basically, you have 4 ways by what is called a writ of certiorari, or the writ of cert, which is where a lower court is ordered to send up a case, usually by a petitioner. In this case, would be Donald Trump, who has petitioned the Supreme Court to look at a case if any constitutional rights have been violated. You have a certificate. The order of certificate was where a lower court asks for a case or clarification on a case to which they're not sure how to rule. And then you have appeals from your high state courts and your appeals from your high or your district courts. In this case, what Donald Trump is doing, Donald Trump has petitioned the court on a number of different issues. His latest victory is what came out of Colorado, where the high state court there deemed him in violation of the 14th Amendment by causing an insurrection, and therefore he there and in Maine, but the Supreme Court said, you can't do that. And so that was a major victory for Trump on that ground. But moving forward, I mean, Trump is still trying to push this whole immunity thing. He wants immunity from whatever crimes he might be able to be linked to within what happened on January the 6th. Whether or not the court has kind of hinted that they'll hear that case. If I'm a judge on the Supreme Court case, and by the way, just for clarification, they have what's called the rule of 4. You have to have 4 justices who will, even if Donald Trump petitions, you still have to have 4 justices who are going to agree to hear the case. Okay, review the case. I shouldn't say hear the case. That's not really the right terminology. Is to review the case, to review, his, in this case, since this is a president asking for immunity, in these kind of cases, The Supreme Court can have original and exclusive jurisdiction. When I say original jurisdiction, I mean a case can originate then at the Supreme Court because it involves an ambassador, or in this case, the president, an officer of the government. If he and they can have it, and they could also, and I think in this instance it would be a case of exclusive jurisdiction where they are the only ones who can hear this case because of his level in the government as a former president. So what's going to happen here, though, if I'm one of those, like I said, a rule of 4, I would avoid this like cancer. I would avoid getting involved in this case because the judges, you saw a little bit of the Joe actually hammered a little bit of on the judges in the State of the Union address, about overturning Roe v. Wade. And of course, the judges and the military guys, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, if you ever watch a State of the Union address, they're solemn, no emotion, no nothing. And I could just see them just kind of, hats off to John Roberts, Chief Justice John Roberts, because they just all sat there and just like, yeah, we overturned Roe v. Wade. You can't do anything about it. And then he says, I'm going to pass a federal law that's going to protect. I'm right now. I know that if I'm the Supreme Court, I have a target painted on my back, and
100%.
And I don't necessarily, there's things that the court has ruled. One of the things that you and I differ on, and some of the things that, my wife and I differ on, stuff involving choice and life and all. I never thought, and I remember saying this to your class when I had you guys in government class. I said, as early as 4 years ago, you'll never see Roe v. Wade overturned. I thought for sure that was an ironclad 14th Amendment protected right of women, the right to choose. I never in a million years thought that a court would overturn Roe v. Wade until I even forgot what state it was challenged from, that case made it to the Supreme Court to overturn. I don't know where that case came from, but the fact that it got overturned, and not just it was a 6-3 vote, wasn't it, to overturn that? I'm pretty sure it was 6-3 or 7-2. I'm thinking it was 6-3.
Yeah.
And that to me, that's one of the. I mean, that was history happening. That was history happening. I mean, I don't know if I was a. Roe v. Wade came out in 74. That was the year I was born, but I think it was I'm almost sure it was in January of 74, and I was born in August of 74 because they always did the pro-life. They always do the pro-life march in January to commemorate or to protest the Roe v. Wade decision. So, back to, and I guess just to circle back to where we originally came from, this is the discussions that we want to have. These are the discussions that we want to have. And we're actually talking about civil rights and liberty in my government class. We're getting close to the end of the year. And when we're talking about free speech today, when we talked about free speech, the idea behind free speech, originally by our framers, by our founding fathers, was about, the right to free speech was about having discussion, critical of the government, and the other part of it was just to have the discussion. I asked my kids today, I said, what is it? What's missing from the concept of a discussion today? And both of my classes both chimed in and they said, people listening. People listening. When you have a discussion, it's I talk, you talk. When I'm talking, you're listening. When you talk, I'm listening. And we're processing. And like you said earlier, we're beyond that stage of processing. We don't process anymore. We go on the weird crap-o-meter, and we go so far, because of social media, because of all this stuff, we pick up on every little tiny instant conspiracy theory, everything that's out there, and we run with it. And when we make a statement like we made last week, when we were making our statements last week, and I'll submit between anywhere between 4 and 6 TikTok clips a week, and if we say something that's even, like you said at the beginning, even the smallest bit critical of either Trump or of Biden, I mean, we've been called right-wing cultists, we've been called snowflakes, we've been called everything. That to me those are listeners who are conditioned to have that knee-jerk response whenever they hear something that's contrary, instead of approaching it with an open mind. Oh, it could be like that. It could very well be like that. I never thought of it that way. But instead it's just boom like that. We've got to be able to act on impulse and say, oh no, that's anything that's even the slightest bit contrary to our realm of belief, we're all over it. So, and I think that's part of having these discussions, these talks like this. So,
yeah, I agree. I think that it's, again, our avid listeners, our avid fan base knows where we kind of sit on things, and again, we are just, because we both love this country.
yes.
We love our fellow men and women and the people that inhabit our great United States. And it is okay. It is just like our founding fathers and the Boston Tea Party beforehand. It is okay to be critical. It is okay to be loud. It is okay to be vocal. It is okay to say enough is enough. And that is what we're saying. It's a very difficult, complex process. And I can speak for V, I can speak for myself. We want the best individual on top for this nation. And I would say, again, for both of us, I feel like we believe that neither Donald Trump nor Joe Biden is the individual that is fit for that position. And for these cases, it is Joe is clearly showing signs of dementia, of potential Alzheimer's. He cannot walk. I actually, you know what? I am
just say it.
You know what? I will. Here's the thing. This is something that I
ahead.
was told today. And again, I am going to say I have this from a credible source that I cannot name. I have no idea if this is true. This is something that I was told today that I believe. However, I am going to say, take it with a grain of salt as you hear it come from my lips. I was told by an individual who is actively working in an area that Joe Biden has visited, that his Secret Service team, representatives of his Secret Service team, came to said locations, all said locations where the president would be visiting, and all of these locations had to make modifications to their stairs so that the president could walk up the stairs, because he has too much trouble walking up a normal set of stairs.
Wow. Well,
that is and now mind you, let me rephrase something.
He is 81.
That is not inherently a bad thing. We've had a president that was in a wheelchair before. I'm not saying that someone that has a disability, it couldn't be a great president, because we know that's not true.
Yep, right.
However, if you are old enough to the point where you cannot walk up the steps, maybe it's not time to be president. And maybe also, if you are currently facing over 90 court allegations, you have been now sued for close to $400 million. Maybe you should focus on other things other than being president of the United States of America. So my 10 cents on that. I wish we could get, I just wish we could get a level-headed, it's one of those things where there's so many great candidates that we'll never get the chance
Nope.
to see because for some
Old white,
reason
yeah,
it's
old
just
white
not
guys club.
the case. So we're going to kind of circle around and talk about and we're choosing this subject just because it kind of cuts right smack dab in between where V lives and where I live. We do this show remotely. Obviously, we're not sitting in the same room, but.
Nice, but you know.
Columbia, Missouri, as many of you guys know, the home of Mizzou, had a student who recently went missing in Nashville, Tennessee. Um, the individual's name is Riley Gaines, I think, was the young man's name.
Riley Strain. Riley Strain.
Riley Strain. Riley Strain. My apologies. Riley Strain, 22 years old, I do
Yes,
believe.
22. Yep.
Went missing in Nashville out of Luke Bryan's country bar, and is still currently missing. And I'm not sure if he's going to share with you guys. There has been some CCTV footage, closed caption television footage that has made its way to police. Yeah. Closed circuit. I don't know, closed caption, closed circuit television. That there has been footage that has made its way of this individual of Riley stumbling drunk around near the blocks where he was kicked out of a bar for I'm going to assume was he was too intoxicated and they kicked him out of the bar. Every article I've read, it says it does not state why he was kicked out. I worked in the bar industry for a very long time. Usually when patrons are asked to leave, it's not because they were being great patrons. Doesn't necessarily mean he was doing something inherently wrong, but it also means he was too drunk to stay at the bar. Watching the video footage, it is very clear that he was also too drunk to be walking around by himself.
Yeah, I just showed, while you were talking there, I just showed a little bit of the clip of him kind of stumbling across the street there.
So V and I talked about this before the show started, based off of kind of, and I can't say there's no real credible source I've heard this from. This is all just from different reporters that I've seen on X and that I've seen articles for. Is the current belief is, and what V and I talked about is we are leaning more towards he stumbled into the river. What is that river? That is
Cumberland. That's Cumberland River.
The Cumberland River. I saw a bunch of posts of people reaching so hard at who is this individual in this shirt, in this shot. They don't seem to be moving. They seem to be staring at him. What did they do after this? There were so many posts
they're wanting to, they're wanting foul play,
that he was abducted. And
this kid, by the way, this kid's 6'5", 160 something. If anybody's going to abduct this kid, it would probably be like Paul Bunyan or somebody, because I don't think anybody's going after a 6'5" kid. That's a pretty big boy.
He's very, very tall, very lanky. I don't necessarily think it was foul play. It could have been. It definitely, nothing that I saw on the surveillance footage indicated towards that. But a couple of factors that are going to come out later. So as many of you know, I worked in the bar industry for a long time. One of the things that, again, my 10 cents on it is it makes it very difficult, but again, it's the industry that you choose. For those that don't know, if you are a bartender, if you own a bar and you overserve someone, and for example, they go out, they get into a car accident, they hurt somebody because they were drunk driving, and it turns out that you had overserved them, you were the individual responsible for serving them, you can get in trouble legally. Okay. At least in the state of Missouri. I don't know if that's all states, but I know that is a rule in the state.
So that's a liability thing.
Yes. So what I have seen, the posts that I have seen from reporters, is that there's not been a clear-cut answer from the bar as to why he was kicked out. There's two reasons why I think that. Reason one might sound like, no, that can't be true, but it really could be, is in a bar like that, I can guarantee you that it was extremely crowded, extremely busy. This is Luke Bryan's bar, spring break, Nashville. Like he mentioned, he was at a party with over 200 of his fraternity brothers. There's a very good chance if just a bouncer saw him being too drunk, or a bartender. There have been multiple times where if I was a bartender, there was someone that was being too drunk, starting to get belligerent, slurring their words, spilling drinks, whatever it was at the bar, I would say, security, this guy's got to go. I would watch them, take him out. That would be the end of it.
Have you
It's
have you
very.
have you ever been? This is one of the things that I was questioning. Have you ever been in Nashville before?
Yes.
Okay, so we know so they're on Broadway. So Broadway runs right there through the middle of town. On the weekends, and I've done Nashville 6 or 7 times. My wife and I love Nashville. Great town, great atmosphere, great city. Even if you're not a country music fan, it's a great place to go and visit. And so if you go down there on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, so from about where the Predators play hockey there, I can't remember the name of that arena there. Anyway, from pretty much there on down, they'll have that, and you can actually see it in the CCTV footage of this young man. They have that, it's blocked off. I mean, you can walk into pretty much any bar, and the great thing about the atmosphere down there is that you can go down there, and you can walk into a bar for a little bit. You don't like the scene there, you can go over, and on a Friday night it's a mass of people. And I bet you, like you said, on spring break, I bet you anything that it was doubled, tripled. People just walking that strip, going up and down. My question is, and I don't want to throw shade on these young men, but this was a fraternity. This was I want to say it was like I can't remember what fraternity it was, Delta something or other, but it was that these guys were down, and they were there for some kind of get together, that their national fraternities meeting down there. And if you've been in these bars on a Friday night, and I mean, there's some, and my wife and I are not, we don't like being around large groups of people too long. But if you walk into these bars on a Friday night, and we'll tuck our head in when we go down there, we'll walk in and we'll catch maybe a couple of songs in, and somebody said, "Oh, we hear that. Let's go check out that one." When you go in these places, it's wall to wall people, and my concern is, like what were these guys doing? I mean, it's crazy in these places anyway. What were these guys doing that should be something that should be looked at, is the bar footage. What were these guys doing in the first place to get kicked out of the bar? And I'm they said that the bar has been very cooperative with police, but I mean, are you nervous being a bar owner? Like, kind of going with what you were saying, are you nervous being the bar owner of that particular establishment, that, hey, you put that kid out on the street, and he's flowing towards Knoxville now in the Cumberland River? I mean, I would love to see just the footage of what that kid was doing that was so terrible.
As we were as we're trying to see, there's a couple of things. So this is, for example, so I was looking, I was trying to do some quick things to see if there had been any really updates or whatever it might have been. And the first thing I see is, there needs to be a law that bars can't kick people out without making sure they get home safe. Get a police escort home. Stupid. Absolutely not. No.
They'd be spinning
what am I supposed to do if someone is belligerent, if someone is hammered, getting violent, getting rowdy? I'm just supposed to say, "Oh no, have to wait to make sure the police show up to get you out"? Absolutely
You'd
not.
be tied up all night long.
Exactly. You wouldn't be able to get work. Are small bars that can't afford that just supposed to close down? Ignorant. I hate that kind of shit.
How many bars
so
have you worked?
Dumb.
How many bars have you worked in that have had bouncers in them?
Every bar. 1, 2, 3.
So is that a so
four,
that's a state? So
five.
That's a staple now. You pretty much, if you're a decent bar that does a decent amount of business, you have to have
every bar that I've been at. 2 bars that I've worked at always had off-duty police officers there.
Really?
Always.
Wow.
Like from when the drinking crowd would show up. So one of them was at 7 p.m. and on until close. We had a police officer
so you guys
that would get paid. We would pay him directly, not the city. And then we had another bar that I worked at had like, it was just a larger district, so they'd have police carting people on their way in, security staff carting people on their way in, and then several of the bars would have a police officer and bouncers there at all times. Um, and not because we were like an inherently rowdy crowd. It's just like if you're a bar and you've got 2,000 people crammed in that kind of space, you have to have some kind of thing. But
so
one of the other things was I saw a video that someone had did a Google map basically of all of the from when he leaves the bar to the first time he's seen on camera to the last image of him on camera. And the unfortunate truth of it is, the last video of him is at a point here, and if you go left, you go back towards downtown at the street. This is a corner of a street, so he's the last spot he's seen. If he is to take a right, okay, so if he doesn't go left, he goes right. It is a bridge, okay, and it looks like if you look at the bridge, it's just a bridge you would drive your car over. The side of it is maybe 3.5, 4 feet. You look at how tall he was, at how stumbling he was. If he would have taken a right, gone onto that bridge and got halfway through and tried grabbing at the wall that wasn't there, it's very likely he would have fallen right over the side.
Yeah,
but
so
what were you saying?
No, I'm getting this. I found the map that you're talking about here. I'm trying to get it. But so one of the questions, I'm obviously you and I are different on the. I mean, I don't do the bar scene very much. I mean, I do DJ it. I've done gigs at places like that before. But I mean, how hard are you trying to get like a certain? Are you guys just when you're if you're managing a bar, are you trying to avoid certain? Do you want to keep the crowd at a certain age group, or do you want to?
100%. But it's not like you can enforce it. But I would rather, truthfully, I would rather work at a bar that served anyone 30 years and older. I've worked the bars where it's you got kids, you have college bars where you have kids trying to get in with fake IDs, people in their young 20s that have just started drinking. I they suck. The people, it's not fun. I get it. I get why it is that way. You know, you're young, you're just able to turn 21 and you want to go out, you want to drink, you want to party. I get why they are the way that they are. Clubs like that have never been my favorite thing to do. I've worked in them because they paid well. It's not that I necessarily enjoyed working at nightclubs where we had Chiefs players coming and spending money on bottles, and then certain Chiefs players trying to avoid paying their tabs because they couldn't afford to pay their tabs. Wink, wink. Chiefs players ripping bottle service girls off the bar because they're mad at them. Fun times.
Nope.
But the thing is, so there's just certain bars that kind of attract a certain kind of mentality, certain crowds that just like get rowdy. So no joke. So I was I was a manager at a gay nightclub in downtown St. Louis in the Grove. And the Grove now is kind of known. It's not necessarily the best neighborhood anymore compared to what it used to be. It used to be a real artsy district. Now just hope your windows are stronger than the guy punching them. But when I was there, the only time anything ever got out of line, and I'm not making this up, I had 2 instances that I can recall where I physically had to fight someone, and both times it was a very drunk, heterosexual claiming man who stumbled his way into our bar and assaulted someone after they saw them kissing another man or something like that. It was, and so it was never that crowd. I worked at a nightclub that I wouldn't even really call it a nightclub. We were an arcade bar, and we would rarely have any issues. Again, this was a bar that we had an off-duty cop at, and The only time we would ever really get fights would be from the jump. It was never like you were never surprised that that individual got into a fight. It was like they kind of showed up, and from the jump it was like, no, we're not going to serve you. Like, you're all like, you have come to the bar, you're acting belligerent, you're acting crazy, you're talking shit to us. No. um you know, when I worked at McDingers, it was the GM there. We would have guys that would try to fight. Didn't really have a whole lot of issues there. That it was like typically truckers, that would come in. And here's the thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about people that, like, most individuals, not that's a gross generalization. I apologize. A lot of people, like this dumbass that posted that every bar needs to keep people in a kennel until cops show up. You are an idiot, ma'am. You're an idiot. You're a fucking idiot for that post. It just made me angry.
You're setting yourself
Anywho,
up, you're setting yourself up for even more.
But what people, the big misconception is like that all people are just like, you as a bartender or even as an individual, you can just see someone the whole time you're at work. You just see the stages of them getting more and more and more and more intoxicated.
Right,
and you're like, oh, right. There's your barometer. There are people out there who's will switch like a light. Like, they'll be good, they'll be good, they'll be good. You can't tell. And then all of a sudden, it's too much. Like, it is instant. When I worked at McDingers, there were two individuals that I'm not going to name. Two individuals that I barred from drinking for a month. I told them, you are not drinking for a month because you are acting like an idiot. I told my bartenders, whether or not my bartenders had actually followed through with that when I was there, I don't know, because I kept seeing these individuals. But one of them was because they would get so sloppy at the bar, they would start to talk shit, and then would do some greasy shit in the parking lot, try to do some greasy shit in the bathroom. They were just gross.
Yeah. Yep.
But the other one got so drunk that they drove, like, for those, this bar sits at the top of a hill, got so drunk that they drove their truck straight down the grass hill into a ditch, ramped up, and got lucky that they were able to get onto the road. And I told them, you're not allowed to drink here anymore. But that was an individual that I was serving. I didn't have eyes on that one individual. If there's 300 people in your bar, you have your head on a swivel, you're checking everybody. But a bartender that's actively ringing in drinks, because here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. If you're a bartender, right, you're working now if you're a bartender and there's 4 people at your bar and you can't tell when someone's getting too drunk, that might be on you. However, if I'm a bartender, okay, and especially, like, let me tell you how, when I worked at a bar called Angels Rock Bar in the Power and Light District in St. Louis. Even when I worked at Just John, even when I worked at McDingers on busy nights, this is how the interaction with someone can go if you're bartending. Okay, if what can I get you to drink? Boom, thank you. Do you have a tab going? Or boom, are you paying cash? Boom, thank you. Make the drink. You hand it here. Boom, you collect it. See you later. Next person. Or sometimes that person might just walk up to you. Like, if you've served them before, this could be the interaction. Here's their drink. Boom, make the drink. Hand it to them. I'm not going on their tab and going, this person's had 8 drinks. They should probably stop drinking right now. That's not how it works. Like, there is so much that's going on.
There's so much going on.
And mind you, there are instances where you can tell if, like, there were days if I was working at the bar, and even if I was busy, and if I would see a guy slumped over, already looking angry, kind of leaning, wobbling around, like, I wouldn't serve him. And then we'd come over and he would already be like, what the fuck? No one's going to serve me? I'd say, I can't serve you, man. You're way too drunk right now. And if they gave me any flag, like, what the fuck, dude? I just say, security, come get this guy, get him out of here. It's not it's not worth the headache. There's ways you learn, good bartenders, you learn how to circumnavigate to where, like, you just tell guys, hey man, I closed you off. Some of my old favorite bar tricks were, I would have individuals that would be so drunk, before they showed up. But it's like, if I'm there by myself and 3 drunk guys come in, what am I gonna? Am I just gonna get my ass whooped by 3 guys like as I'm working the bar? No, but there's tricks to the trade. You know, if they're like, give me a vodka soda, make it strong. Awesome, I got you, man. You put the drinks down, boom, 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 soda, soda, soda. You take the straws, you put a little vodka in the straw, so that way their first hit, ooh, that's a good strong drink, man. Thank you so much. I got you, dog. Boom. Like there's tricks to the trade you learn. But in this case, I think that it's a high pace volume bar. I think they saw he was too drunk. They probably cut him off. They probably told me he had to leave. And again, and I know we're running close on time, but with this individual, the reports that I saw were that some of his friends tried to leave without paying their tab. I don't know how true that is.
Right.
So, but it's one of those things where, he might have left without them. They went to pay their tabs. By the time they came back, he was gone.
Yeah, and they also found his hotel key a half mile. Just to show you real quick, this was the map, and I know Sean's not able to see this, but I believe this is the map he was talking about, based upon.
Kind of looks like this.
It's different than that, but yes, it's similar. It's similar to that. So you see all the areas that he could have possibly went. Mm-hmm. And so what is that? Looks like 2 blocks. Yeah, 2 blocks from the river. Okay.
Yeah.
And man, I hope, I don't drink. I've never have drink. But I tell you what, when you guys go out and drink, man, it's hard sometimes, I think, to be responsible, but extra care in that. So that being said, we covered a broad spectrum tonight.
A lot of broad strokes hit.
From talking about political extremism to presidents who can't walk upstairs, to missing college students in downtown Nashville. I think we covered it all tonight.
We knocked it out the park, and then next week, as soon as we kind of hopefully have more news, we do have a little thing that we're working on cooking up to talk about on our next show that I'm actually excited about. I think our listeners will be excited. Mm-hmm. We're going to try to steer away a little bit from politics for a little bit.
Yes.
At least for maybe the next couple of episodes, and just get into a couple of different trending topics. But no, this was a great episode. It was a lot of fun. Again, be a friend, tell a friend to our listeners. Whether you're finding us on TikTok, Spotify, wherever you do your podcast listening, thank you. Make sure to be a friend, tell a friend, like us on TikTok. We are so close to that 1,000 to where we can go live on TikTok, which will really help boost our viewership. As long as Congress doesn't ban it.
Ban it.
So we could hit 1,000 and then big old
take a dump.
Kaput. So great talking to you guys. Great talking to you, V, as always. And we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to the Voice of Reason podcast. Be sure to check out our other content on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok.